Hi, welcome to Speaking Your Life into Existence. My name is Carla Barker, and today I'll be telling you about how I had to apply at the last minute to get an urgent passport for myself and one of my younger sons. So initially, I had already applied for myself and three of my kids, and I do have four sons. Now, there were two hangups with the passport application for myself and for my son. The first one being for myself was my driver's license still had my married last name, whereas my divorce had just been finalized the month before and I had not taken the time out to change it. So that was the first thing that I had to hurry up and do with my local driver's license office was to get my name updated and show them that hey, I'm divorced now and I need this to go back because I need this documentation updated for passports. All in all, that only took about 2 to 3 weeks for me to receive the updated copy, which was great news on my part. And the other holdup, which took a lot of effort, was getting my youngest, well, my not my youngest, my second son's date of birth corrected to the correct year. Now, ironically as it is, my oldest son was born on August 16th, 2013, and my youngest son was born on August 16th, 2017. So while they have the same month in the same day, they were born 4 years apart. But in my final divorce decree, it did have them both listed as 2013, which created a problem for the passports. Therefore, to avoid losing any money, I didn't apply for him. And I knew I would need to apply once the divorce decree was corrected. This took a lot of work. I ended up having to drive 5 hours to my old town to pick up the corrected form because they said it was returned in the mail when I gave them my updated address, which happened to be at Airbnb. And previously, I had no problems getting mail at that location. So it was a little bit odd, but I was willing to do whatever needed to be done to get the documents I needed to keep things rolling. So once I had those documents, I then booked our flight and then I called the urgent passport traveling line. Now, they had an extremely long wait time, and when I spoke with a representative, they did let me know that my flight had to be within 14 days. But all of the available time slots they were giving me were after the day that I booked my flight, which wasn't going to work because I wasn't trying to reschedule and pay change fees and go through all of that. So I reached out to a couple of my resources that I had here in Mexico that I found about as I was researching, my move abroad because I've been planning this for over a year now. I wanted to be sure that I've crossed all my dots and my T's and that I was making a sound decision. So I did find out that I was able to make a passport appointment by letting them know that my date of travel was anytime within the 14 days and they would not verify that it was the said date. So I was able to get a passport appointment for urgent travel. I think it was 4 days before my flight left. So it was for a Friday. And my flight left on that Monday or that Tuesday, early Tuesday morning, shall I say. So it was going to be hard. And it seemed like from there, things continued to go downhill for a while. But again, I was determined. Like, I had been planning this. I gave up my apartment. I quit my job, guys. And I was relying on the fact that I had savings and my faith that my research was accurate, faith that I was making the right decision for me and my children. Sure, in the background, there was a little bit of wonder, doubt. Am I doing the right thing? But ultimately, I'm taking on this new mindset of positivity in 2023. So I had to believe that everything that led me to this point was meant to happen. So one of the first obstacles that came with getting to the passport appointment was I was located in McAllen, Texas at the time. And the appointment was only available for Houston, Texas, which was a pretty big drive, and I no longer had my car. So I went to a couple of rental car places in McAllen, Texas, but I didn't have a major credit card available for that had the available balance on it that would be needed to get the rental car. So I reached out to one of my family members and luckily they came through. I did have to pay for a rental car, send them the money, but they were able to get the rental car, drive down, and get me to Houston. And that's all that I cared about at that time. It was a huge unexpected cost, and it did cut into my savings a lot. But ultimately, I had to do what I had to do. Then once we arrived to Houston, I had to find a, well, I'm not gonna say cheap, but affordable hotel, which was about 70 per night for my budget. And we stayed there for about 4 nights. So we arrived at the hotel around like 2 a.m. Friday morning, and my passport appointment was at 8:45 a.m. for that Friday. So I literally had like less than 4 hours of sleep, and I had to, unpack all the bags, bring them up to the hotel room, and then I was able to catch a ride to the passport appointment with my children. Now, once I arrived there, I was thinking, okay, well, I have the appointment, I have my confirmation number they gave me. I'm gonna show them the documents, and I'm gonna get my passport the same day. Wrong. First of all, when I arrived there, I didn't realize the line for security would be that long. I mean, the line went out of the building all the way around the corner. And that had me worry, like, okay, well, I got here 15 minutes in advance, but the way the line was moving, I felt like I was going to be late for the appointment and they might turn me away. So that was my first concern. But when I arrived, they said, hey, it's no problem. As long as you have your documents, you're good to go. And so I had to wait. And when it was our time to get up to the window, I showed them all the documents. I showed them the confirmation for the plane tickets, and everything went really smoothly. Um, there were two different windows that I had to go to on my initial visit. On the second, or at the second window, I was told that the soonest the passports would be ready for myself and my son would be that Monday. Now, our flight, believe it or not, was for Tuesday at, I want to say, around 6:45 a.m. So I became very panicked and I was like, how am I going to make this happen? Because I had like at least, I want to say, 4 to 6 hour drive back to McAllen, Texas, and I had to get to the flight on time. And I didn't want to be driving late at night because I can't see that well. I have vision problems already, but it seems like as I get older, my night vision gets worse. So that was another concern that I had. So over the weekend, we pretty much just, chilled in our hotel room. I actually did um, find a way to pay off one of my credit cards, and I was able to get a rental car from one of the local airports, which actually gave me time to take my kids to the zoo. We got to visit some of the popular tourist areas in Houston, even though I was raised in Houston. It was nice to be able to take my kids out instead of just sitting in the room. Then Monday came and I went back to the appointment with all four of my children, as you can imagine. And I had read that it said, don't show up early, but I was like, man, last time the line was really long and I want to be in and out. So I showed up about 2 hours early. And it just so happened that Monday it wasn't that busy. The line was moving fast. So I got upstairs. I believe it was on the third or the fourth floor of the building. And when I got there, they were like, oh, well, we don't see you early for pickups. So you can go wait downstairs in the cafeteria. So with kids how that goes. They wanted their snacks, they wanted their juice. I have three toddlers. I have a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So every now and then they want to throw a temper tantrum. And I was just trying to, get through this and get the passports and let's go. We have places to be. So it all worked out and they were, I'm not going to say on their best behavior, but they did well considering. So we were able to go pick up the passports. Everything went smoothly. Everything on the passport was correct, and I was super excited that I now had all five passports. Now, if you watched one of my, I believe it was my second video on my channel, that was one of my goals for 2023 to get passports for myself and my children, and I had just accomplished that. And so I was really excited. The next thing I did was that morning before picking up the passports, I had already packed up all our stuff from the hotel room and turned in the key. I was ready to hit the road. So we did a quick restroom break, changed my youngest son's diapers because he's not yet potty trained, but we're working on that. And we hit the road and we're on the way back to McAllen, Texas. Now, I want to say we arrived in McAllen, Texas, probably around 8:30 p.m., which, For me, it was perfect timing because it was just starting to get dark to where I didn't have to drive a long way in the dark and I didn't have to worry about, not being able to see good. But on the other hand, our flight was until 6:45 a.m. that morning. So I took my kids to one of the parks nearby. I let them play for a couple hours. And when I say a couple, I mean like 2 hours, and that was it 'cause the mosquitoes started coming out. And then, guys, I went returned the rental car to the McAllen Airport Enterprise. Luckily, no accidents, nothing occurred. We made it safely. And from there, we just waited for them to call our flight, and we ended up booking or checking in, I guess it's called checking into our flight. And it was very straightforward. Like it was easier than what I thought. For the most part, my kids did really well. When we first arrived there, it was the excitement, I guess, that overtook them, and they wanted to run around and explore. And I had a few problems getting their attention, let them know this is not the place to be running around. I need you to be still and sit down. But overall, it was a good experience. Um, Once I got them settled, they sat on the benches. I gave them their blankets and jackets, and they laid down and went to sleep. And I sat there and just browsed on my phone and watched Netflix and did things to stay awake because I wanted to be vigilant of my children in case one of them woke up. I didn't want them like wandering off or getting kidnapped. The world we live in today, you just never know what could happen. So that was one of my priorities, as well as watching our luggage because I had like my laptop and important work equipment in there. So I pretty much winged it all night. I didn't get much sleep, but that is okay. And once it was time to check in, they weighed our bags, and this was my first time flying, so I didn't know anything about, how big a carry-on bag had to be. But when it came to check-in, we did have to check 3 bags, not because they were overweight, but because of the dimensions of the bag wouldn't fit into the carry-on spot. So that was a lesson learned. And we had 2 carry-on bags, which were included for free. So after checking in, we went ahead and waited for them to begin boarding us, which was probably another hour or so before we checked in or after we checked in. And during that time, just seeing like all the airplanes up close, I was super excited. My kids had woken up at that time. They were up early. My kids are always up early, so it wasn't a surprise for me, but it was a wonderful experience. A little bit confusing as they were calling like the different letters and numbers on the plane tickets because I wasn't sure how anything worked. It was my first time flying. My kids were looking to me to know what to do, and I had no idea. But somehow we made it onto the flight and gave the lady our tickets. She let us on, and I asked one of the passengers behind me, how do I know which seat we're supposed to be sitting in? Because as I was walking down the plane aisle, I couldn't see any like seat numbers or anything. And then he pointed it out to me. So that really helped out a lot. Now, in my case, I didn't want to pay extra for selecting seats, but because I have such young kids, I went ahead and I paid the little bit of extra money for the ticket because I wanted to know where my kids were. Like I'm a mom and I have young ones. I didn't want them bothering anybody. I wanted to be able to see them, if I needed to tell them to sit down or have a little talk with them. I wanted them to be right there within my reach. So, I don't know if all planes are like this, but we flew with United Airlines, and the planes, they have 3 seats on each row. And so we're a family of 5. I have 4 boys, and it's myself. So I know my 2 youngest boys are very attached to me, like super attached. So if I would have sat them on a row with their old behind us with their older brother, it would have been a problem the whole flight. So I set those 2 next to me, and I set my 2 oldest, my 9-year-old, my 5-year-old, behind us. And everything went smoothly. Takeoff, I'm not gonna lie, it was super exciting. And as the plane took off, it shook a lot, and it was just like this force that jerked me back. And I got a little bit dizzy. But as we were in the air, just looking out of the window, it was peaceful and calm. The lady ended up coming by and giving my kids snacks and drinks, and they fell asleep for a majority of the plane ride until we landed in DFW in Dallas. Now, we had a lot of fun at that airport. So they had like this well, lots of restaurants and stuff. So first thing we did when we got off is I took them to the restroom, changed my youngest son's diaper again because it had been a 2 to 3 hour flight. And then we ended up getting breakfast. And when I say I was surprised at the prices in the airport, like I knew it was expensive, but I did not know it was that expensive. And then you know how kids are. So they picked at their food and I was a little upset, but I went ahead and paid it and just wrote it off as that. Now, as we were waiting, because we had an overlay of, honestly, about 6 hours. We were just walking around the airport trying to figure out where we were supposed to be, when we needed to be to board onto our second flight, so there would be no delays, we wouldn't miss anything. One thing that really helped me out was those checked bags from the first flight. We didn't have to go pick those up and recheck them in or anything like that. They automatically went to their direct destination, and we only had to pick them up once we arrived in Mexico. That helped out so much because me being a solo mom with 4 kids, having to tote those bags would have been horrible, especially with toddlers. So I only had to worry about the 2 bags that we used as carry-ons, and my oldest son carried one and I carried the other. I had 2 of my toddler's hands and he had one of the others, and we were gone, and it went pretty great. Now, there's like this I don't know, it's like an airport shuttle type train thing in DFW. When we discovered that, my kids fell in love. So we rode that just a couple of times just because it kept them quiet and they loved looking out the window, sitting down. It was just such a thrill for them. It was actually a thrill for me too. I had never been on a train before, and sure, it's not the typical type of train, but hey, first time for everything, so I'll take it. And looking back, I was af- I was afraid because I have this fear of heights. I was afraid to fly, but it wasn't that bad of an experience. Now, if you would have asked me in the moment when my kids were having those temper tantrums, I would have looked at you and be like, why did I decide to do this? What was wrong with me? But now that I'm looking back in the future and I've seen how everything has worked out, and I think about what could have happened and the little moments where they did throw their temper tantrums, it wasn't as bad as what it could have been. So when it comes to thinking about traveling to a different country or taking a further flight, I'm completely okay with that. Like, it wasn't as bad as what I thought it would be having 3 toddlers. And they really enjoyed themselves. I enjoyed it, and it's a memory that we'll always have. Now, arriving in Mexico, that was very interesting. So, eventually, we did board at DFW, our second flight, and the view was amazing. The skies were so clear, we could see the ocean. And the flight was actually quicker than expected because it was such great weather. There was a little bit of turbulence at the end, and they said to, make sure your seatbelt was on, stay seated. Now, that was a little scary, but it wasn't too bad. We didn't take a nosedive or anything crazy like that. So we ended up landing. And as we landed, we actually passed over the beach, and I could see like the crystal clear water and the almost looks like white sand from that far above. It was really beautiful. It was like a scene from a movie, and I couldn't believe I actually had done it. I was here. But we made it. And, we got off the plane and we went look for our bags. We found all of our bags. And we had to fill out some form. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe um, I don't know if it was a FFM form or something. It was something they had us fill out. And I had to sign just saying that I didn't bring, I think it was certain monetary items or value, but that went pretty smoothly. We went through the metal detector. When it came to checking in and getting our passport stamped, the only question they asked me was how long I wanted to stay for. I said the 6 months, and they asked how I would support myself. And I said, well, I do work online. So I said, I'm able to work from anywhere in the world. And he was like, okay. And he stamped it, and we were good to go. So we are officially here. I believe it's until August 26, 2023. Now, I may leave out sooner than that, but it will be around August when I plan to leave out. And from there, I actually reached out to my main contact. I hired Cartez Ross from Move Abroad and Thrive to help us find our apartment, and he was godsend. I mean, he was amazing. So I didn't know how I was going to get from the airport to my Airbnb, but he walked me through it and he told me, okay, when you go look, there's going to be 3 stands for taxis, and just ask how much the rate is and how soon they'll be able to take you, and then go with the one that's more ideal. So I actually did find the most cheapest one, but they said it was going to be like a 2 hour wait versus one that was slightly more expensive, but they were like, we can take you within the next 10 minutes. So with me having my toddlers, I was like, man, let's go. So I paid a little bit more, but the taxi ride was okay. And it was a van. They loaded all the luggage for me. I just had to get my kids in their seatbelt. And we were in Mexico. It was amazing. And they took us directly to our Airbnb. And Cortez Ross met us there. And he actually helped me figure out how the lock worked, because if it wasn't for him, I probably would have been there for about an hour trying to figure it out, and I would have got frustrated. But I'm glad he was there, and we were able to get into the Airbnb and get situated. And the next day, we started looking at places where we were going to live. And I tell you what, 2 days later, I found my apartment. Now, my apartment was really small, or not was, because I'm still here. It is very small, but it's a 2 bedroom. It has a small kitchen, a nice size, I guess, patio with a gate that locks so my kids can play out front, and a part of the patio is shaded, so they're not directly in the heat, and it works for me and my family as a starter appointment. This apartment was only 290 US dollars, which is about 5,000 or 5,200 pesos, and I had to pay 3 deposits up front. But because I'm looking to save as much money as I can, this worked for me. Now, once more money starts coming in and my savings builds up, next go around, I may look for a little bit more expensive apartment. But this checked all the dots and T's, and this was what I needed. It didn't have a pool because my kids can't swim. Now, I would love a pool, but with me having so many little ones and working remotely, I just felt it was best not to have that outside, because I know they like to go play outside. I wouldn't want anything accidentally happening. But one of our goals while here in Mexico is to get them in extracurricular activities. I know one for sure is going to be swimming lessons, which is going to be interesting because my kids, they like the water, but I don't know how they'll do with actually going like in the water and having to swim and going under the water. But, there's a first time for everything, and I'm sure that it'll work out. I know it will work out. And I want to put my oldest in like soccer and just, live our best life. That's what I came here for, to have opportunities that I couldn't afford in the US. And sure, I have 4 kids. I've made mistakes. I've overcame a bad marriage. But ultimately, I'm not thinking about the past. I'm thinking about my future and the future that I want for me and my children. And I feel like things should be affordable. And out here, it's possible for me to live the life I desire, work part time online, and have that quality time to spend with my children and, help them with their homeschooling work, take them to the park, do things that I wanted to do in America that I just didn't have time for. Just to make ends meet when I was living in the US, I worked 2 jobs, and I still had nothing left over at the end of the month. I was on government assistance, and without that assistance, we would have been in trouble. Now, coming out here, there's, of course, no government assistance, but it's okay because my rent is affordable. It's can be easily fitted into my budget, as well as the extracurricular activities and making room for savings. So when I say I'm super excited and glad to be here in Mexico, it has been an amazing journey. It was nothing like what I thought it would be. And looking back at all the obstacles I've overcome, I feel like it was meant for me to be here. I mean, just from having to apply for urgent travel passports at the last minute, not being able to book a rental car when I needed it, because I waited to the last minute. That was my fault. And I wasn't able to do an immediate payment to my credit card. So having to find someone and pay them to come pick me up and bring me to Houston from McAllen. Finding a ride up to the passport agency to turn in all the documents required. finding a rental car that weekend to take my children out, and to also pick up the passports Monday and drive. I want to say it was about on the GPS 4 to 5 hours, but with children, you have to stop, feed them, change them. So for me, it was probably about 6 to 7 hours back to McAllen, wait overnight at the airport, check in, pay the baggage fees, which I wasn't expecting, but it's okay because we made it. Um, get on a plane for the first time, manage my children and their temper tantrums, and keep them entertained while we waited. Keep them calm and stay calm myself as we boarded the airplane. Uh, just, manage time as we waited at DFW for the second flight. Coordinate things when we arrived in Mexico. How to get a taxi. Um, Even before that, when I was waiting in McAllen, that's when I booked my Airbnb. And I actually booked it for 3 days and I only stayed there for, I want to say, 2 nights. So things moved faster than what I expected, but that's always great. So if you're a single parent or a parent in general thinking about ways you could relocate or save money, but you're worried about how your kids may do on the flight, or if you're making the right decision, my advice is go for it. The only way you'll know is by giving it a try. Worst case scenario, get back up and start over again. You have your entire life to try again, but you only have one life. So don't live it saying what you will do because tomorrow is not promised to anyone. Do it while you can and learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, share, and follow. Again, my name is Carla Barker, and the name of my channel is Speaking Your Life into Existence. Have a great day.